Hello friends, I am Omnisci here once more for another video response. This is a video response to comments made in my latest video response to the OG Grumpy GM's comments about the incoming Wizards of the Coast Candlekeep Mysteries. I watched the video. He had several, his position on several things, that he was not happy that their product that they were first planning on releasing in March of this new year was going to be Candlekeep Mysteries, which is a collection, an anthology of 17 mystery adventures. So he had some issues. So I made a video response, and I went down the line about why I thought mysteries can work with Dungeons & Dragons, how I've made them work in the past, the insights that I had on making mysteries work, and he watched my video, which he seemed pretty happy to get a video response, and then on my video he posted his positions. Most of them were just restating the positions that he had already done in his video, which I had linked in mine. So there were a couple new elements which prompted me to want to do this video response to his comments. So, thusly, I will start. Okay, so here are my issues. And again, I'm just responding to what he posted here on my little tablet. Did anyone want this? Yes. Apparently there were several people who wanted to write for it. There are a number of people who do like mysteries, and some of them probably feel that D&D could diversify. Give different game experiences rather than just the save the world or, you know, the different ones that they've had. They've been working on diversifying. If you've been looking at the latest releases they've had, for instance, a whole new way of playing in a divine heroic epic with the Heroic Odyssey or Epic Odyssey of Theros. They have, of course, done the Save the World in a variety of them, from Prince of the Apocalypse and Out of the Abyss and so on, facing these massive threats. You've had one where you save a people from a deadly danger in Curse of Strahd. So the 5th edition experience has been about giving all these different ways of playing, and as you no doubt know, since there are games dedicated towards mysteries, that yeah, it's a genre that people are interested in, and therefore giving people what they want seems to make sense. So did anyone want this? My answer is yes, quite clearly. The writers wanted to write adventures for this, and there are definitely players. When I told my wife this is coming out, she squealed. She's like, yes, this sounds great. And I'll be getting that in March when it comes out. So yeah, my refutation is, yeah, clearly people want this. Was this what Wizards of the Coast promised us? They don't have to promise us anything. They produce product. That's their job. And if it's not what everybody expressly demands from them, they're trying to create a need or create a want. So, you know, creating a want and saying, hey, you can use this game to tell mystery stories doesn't seem like a bad idea. So, you know, I'm not one to nail Wizards of the Coast for what they promised. They've been rolling out a lot of products for these other lines and using the intellectual properties, I think, fairly creatively and fairly, you know, treating things like Temple of Elemental Evil. Princes of the Apocalypse was a nice gesture without just copying the old. It opened up an entire adventure path and series of lesser adventures and gave people a rich experience from first level to, you know, whenever you got done with it. We got done at a 12th. And I thought that was really good. Now with this, sounds like it's going to be much more the modular adventures like Ghosts of Saltmarsh or Tales from the Yawning Portal, which I think is fine if it works out. I mean, there may be some that'll be weaker than others, but yeah, I look forward to seeing what it's all about, and we'll find out together, I trust. So yeah, is this what Wizards of the Coast promised us? Doesn't really hold. They're promising to sell you products if you want to buy them. If you don't want to buy it, that's fine, but I think this'll do well for sales for them, because I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing what can be coming out. I also see this as being something that a lot of DMs are going to be preventing their players from buying. because spoilers are going to be brutal on this. Just saying. Anthologies are fine. How about an anthology with Pharaoh, Isle of Dread? Sure, they can always do that. It's still on the list. I mean, sure, Isle of Dread had a reprint from Goodman Games that Wizards of the Coast allowed them to do. It looks pretty good from what I've seen. It's one of those huge, thick ones with, like, the original version, an updated version, and a 5th edition version. There's a lot of content there, plus all the behind-the-scenes stuff, stories from the writers, and so on. So those are pretty good. Will they come out with them? Probably, if you give them time. They are not in a rush, and I'm fine with that. Putting out stuff a little bit at a time, and then with full support with miniatures and all the other stuff, they get their ducks in a row. Cool. Now, okay, if you initially take the role, and then let's face it, he's the OG GM. He's, obviously puts a high value on the way D&D used to be, and used to be involved just slamming out a lot of adventures, one after the other. This isn't really what Wizards of the Coast does. They put out higher quality products, fully supported with great art, and a whole lot of things have to fall in place for them to have a new release. They have Adventures League, so they write a bunch of adventures for Adventures League. They come out with a miniatures line. They set up very good books and a new DM screen refangled for it. So, I'm sure they're going to do it justice. It's probably going to be a pretty good release, looking at it objectively. If you already are mad at WotC for different things, well, there's not much I can do about that. But honestly, in his video, he didn't really come off as terribly biased, and I'll give him credit for that. There's plenty of hate out there for Wizards of the Coast and what they do with 5th edition. I think that GGM is pretty fair, and I will admit that. And if he has his own viewpoint, hey, that's cool. You don't have to agree with me to watch my videos. Will a mystery work in D&D with spells and the low self-control of players? There seems to be a lot of anti-player bias in his comments. He doesn't seem to think very much of players, and I think that's a shame. Now, don't get me wrong, players from the old school oftentimes had this reputation of treating the game like trash. They're just there to win, whatever that meant. So their buy-in on things like mysteries was fairly minimal. We want to conquer it with combat, we want to be murder hobos, and so on and so forth. That was the perception of a lot of players in older school games. 5th edition doesn't really do that as much because they put so much of an underpinning on the roleplay aspect. We'll make you spend a little bit more work in making characters. We'll give them bonds and flaws and things so that you have things to think about when you're role-playing as a character, and there are rewards for actually doing it with inspiration. So if the story is tied in with your character's interests, it's a lot easier to treat the story with respect as far as playing it. And if you run the game, and I suspect they're going to have all kinds of help for DMs running these mysteries so they can integrate them in with their characters, I certainly hope so. And I have every reason to believe they will. They seem to be quite capable of taking care of outlaying how certain things are presented and giving plenty of Game Master help, and to some extent help for the players too. But I think, by and large, that there will be a certain level of expectation. If you're going to do a mystery, expecting to just rush through it, killing everything, isn't going to work. You're right, Grumpy. But I personally am hoping that the players that play this are a little bit better than that. People who enjoy roleplay, who enjoy unraveling a story and solving a mystery. If you don't enjoy that, then this isn't the right one for your group, and that's fine. If you hate Forgotten Realms and you don't want to play in the Forgotten Realms, there are products for that too. So, I would not hold back a product just because you haven't found the right players for it. I assure you, those players are out there. I've played with some of them and they're awesome. So yeah, there's... as far as the spells, I covered that quite well. I think in my first video response, he's just reiterating what he said. Many spells aren't yes, no, absolutely right answers. A lot of times, in certain circumstances, the players aren't always going to have those spells or will need those memorized spells for other things rather than just finding answers to mysteries. I can't tell you the last time I had a character that memorized Speak with Dead, for instance. But having that in your toolbox, it's up to the writers to be clever about how they can prevent spells from being the bane of a mystery. And I'm sure I can give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And don't worry, I will hold their feet to the fire if I get this book and I look at it and I go, there are huge holes, or this can easily be solved, or yeah, we'll be critical once we see the product. But can magic help out in an investigation? Absolutely. Can it solve it? Some cases, but not very often. So, and a lot of it does depend on how you adjudicate certain spells too. That can have a lot to do with how easy it is to get through a mystery just using spells. Mysteries work in Gotham, Gumshoe, Call of Cthulhu, superheroes, horror. Really? If you're arguing about magic, then how about superheroes? Yes, a lot of superheroes don't, but what happens if you have a psychic superhero? I mean, think about X-Men. All the time when something mysterious happened, they always had to knock Charles Xavier out so that the mystery could commence. He's been knocked out of action on an awful lot of X-Men storylines simply because psychic powers fix everything. They solve all these riddles. And to a certain extent, Jean Grey had to be more of a telekinetic rather than using empathy and telepathy because they don't want her to solve all the problems right away. Those powers are written out in favor of giving her enhanced telekinetic abilities because they don't want that to work. So superheroes not a genre that necessarily work great with mysteries for the exact same reason. But you can do it for all the same reasons that I've already covered. As far as Gumshoe and Gotham, yeah, those are games that are a lot of it around solving mysteries, and they've got design elements for it, largely narrative. And they're fine. I've never criticized them. If that is what you solely want to work on with a series of adventures, then there's nothing wrong with it. I certainly wouldn't criticize a person for wanting to whip out Gumshoe or pull out Gotham. I've never played either of them, but I'm sure they're fine. I've heard lots of good things about both of those games. Now, me personally, I'm not a huge mystery buff. I like one once in a while, and I've told a few good ones myself, I'd like to think. But as far as can mysteries work in D&D, I still absolutely think so, clearly. And another thing I will say, this is an anthology of mysteries. They don't necessarily have to be run cover to cover. Throw one in the middle of a quest, as a side quest. You have that ability. And that, honestly, I think that's the best way to do it. Somebody who picked up Tales from the Yawning Portal, yeah, I know. They do go from low level all the way up through some of the most challenging dungeons in D&D's history, absolutely. And yes, you could go boom, 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 and knock those off with a single set of characters. You could. But it's equally valid to just take one out of the equation and plug it into the player's experience when they're doing other things too, and not necessarily going through the book cover to cover. And I think that's the strength of some of these anthology games, to be honest with you. They're modular on purpose. There's not a lot of interconnectivity between the different adventures in a lot of those cases. And I think that's going to be the case here. So it's going to be presented so you can use it as you wish. So we're going to go there. You could put a mystery as part of a larger game, but a whole game that's just who stole the gem is sort of ruined with spells. That's not a new argument. We've covered that already. And honestly, yes, if you were going to continue to do mystery after mystery after mystery, the players will, understandably so, load themselves up with those divination spells. Probably the only time your players are really going to bog down with a lot of divination spells if they think that they're going to do mystery after mystery after mystery. That's why I think this is more effective if you just plug in one of these mysteries in with an ongoing adventure, because the players might not be completely loaded up with anti-mystery spells, which, would make that more effective. But to each DM as they wish. So who am I to say you're doing it wrong? If the players do load up on anti-magic spells, I have a suspicion, from the quality of writing that I've seen out of the D&D adventure paths and so on and so forth, as of this point, I'm more optimistic than suspicious. So clearly we differ on that, but, I'm optimistic. Clerics and wizards have a utility belt of spells that would make Batman jealous. True. Batman can't just boop. I know that because I have a tool. Well, No, it depends on who does the writing. Some writers for Batman I've noticed are really bad about giving these Conan Arthur Doyle style. I just happen to know this, and boom, that explains how I can get through this because I just happen to know this thing. It's kind of like, you know, the way I'm sure that Sherlock Holmes was written. It was they were written backwards. They posed a scenario, and then they figured out where all of those clues would fit so that he would just know all of these things to the point where it looked like Deus Ex Machina, where he just automatically would solve them as he encountered these things because they were in place so that only he could intuit the different things to make him look amazing. And a lot of the same elements go into, you know, Batman-style adventures when they're not written extraordinarily well. The quality has gone up and down over the years. But it's true. You do have a large toolbox. Clerics get the better end of it because, first of all, they can talk to other planar deities without having to dedicate learning them, putting in pages of your spell book and things like that. And also, but a lot of their answers are very much not as crystal clear. They're relying on interpretation of otherworldly beings, not necessarily getting absolutely crystal clear answers that they can fall back on. They're better as guides, quite honestly, than getting you yes or no answers. But still, locate objects, speak with dead, find the path. Sure, but here's the thing: with mysteries. Locate object is great, as long as they're within 1,000 feet, I think. That's not terribly far. Now, if you're going to encompass everything in, say, a single building, that's fine. But what happens if you're in Candlekeep? Those spells don't work in Candlekeep. There may be options where, you know, there are ways of defeating the various spells that are available. And also, low-level characters don't have access to that, so those adventures in the low levels don't really have to worry about this as much. As it goes further and further, the players who are creative and use these kind of spells to help solve the mystery, a lot of cases, that should be celebrated. The players are thinking of using their stuff well rather than just sledgehammering through situations. And those are skills, honestly, that some people really could use some boning up in. So, I mean, those spells are there for a reason. They could be used and not necessarily bemoaned for using them. Just depends on your attitude and how you're looking at it. And also, you know, ones like Find the Path are pretty high-level spells. That's not something your average-level character is going to do, so that won't matter to all but the most high-end ones. Speak with Dead works, but what if you're not dealing with the dead? That isn't going to help you. And again, what happens if there's no body? Can't do anything about that. So there's a lot of mysteries that you could do that these particular spells aren't going to be all that much of a deal. I have run at least a dozen mysteries in D&D. They did not work. Okay. People found it frustrating when they had to think and not just squash thing or simply cast spells to solve them. Sounds like a player problem, honestly. Or maybe the players weren't adequately inspired to play along with it. Maybe the players were just thinking a little too murder hobo-ish and just wanted to squish things and didn't care. They were just frustrated because the thing that they had been used to wasn't in front of them. Honestly, I think it's a player issue. And it could even be the way that you ran it and the way that you presented the mystery. Now, if you put it in such a way that the players can't simply smash their way through, but there are satisfying ways of getting through it, you'll find the players will generally have better buy-in. That has been my experience. And the good thing is, 5th edition makes that easy. Just take a look at your players' bonds and flaws and things, and throw in hooks that'll tie into those bonds and flaws and goals. Once you've got that down, then the mystery basically takes care of itself in entrancing your players and drawing them in. Now, if you don't use all of that stuff, I can't help you. I can't make you make players that are fully realized and help you to find ways of tying in elements so that your players might care that their characters should care about the mystery. I can't do that for a person. All I can say is, when you get to a point when you want to run a mystery, it's just like horror. If your players don't care, the horror loses all of its fangs. It just becomes an exercise in smacking the monster or running away. And in some of those cases, I've seen people go into Call of Cthulhu and they're like, well, we're just going to die. Well, where are you going to feel anything for that character if you just convince that he's doomed and you just go into it because you know your character is doomed and you want to be entertained by how they're going to die or go mad? No. Horror works when you care. So do mysteries, quite honestly. Now, you can get through most adventures by just plowing your way through and getting to the victory condition. Mysteries are a little different, and they should be treated as such, just like horror. So, and this is something, again, that game masters who've done these kind of adventures have dealt with for years. And again, if you've had problems with that, it could be your players, it could be how you've tied your adventure into the player's interests. Those are the kind of things that you really need to do to run a successful mystery. But here's the thing. It's not just D&D. If they don't care about the overall success, failure, whatever, and just want to shoot things in gumshoe, you'll have the same exact problems. Because most of your detectives and analysts are going to have a gun with them, and if their first instinct is to pull out the gun and use it for whatever reason, they're going to be just as frustrated. So I know there are better mechanics in there that treat with mysteries and things like that, but it still kind of comes to the same position. You need players in the right mindset and level of interest and care in the adventure at hand. Otherwise, you're losing them no matter what. So a skillful game master will find ways to tie their players into a mystery and make them want to. Maybe it's a reward for solving the mission. Maybe it's because they're personally involved with a character that's involved or some such. But that is a very important part in a mystery. And I'm sure that when that book comes out, they'll explain how to do that. Otherwise, I will criticize them roundly and hold their feet to the fire. I assure you, I am a fair judge when it comes down to things like that. Check out my Tasha's Cauldron of Everything review. I called it as it was. It is a compilation of everything. If you have all of the source materials, it's not really all that essential, but it's nice for what it was. Okay, so I'm not just a Wizards of the Coast mark. I'm trying to be as objective as possible with this. Better game masters than I have tried to run mysteries in D&D and failed for the same reasons. Well, I've run them and succeeded. What does that make me? It's just somebody who values players who can care and can be brought to be concerned with the results of your quest, of your adventure, and of a good mystery. And if they don't care, yes, I've had one or two that have failed too, but honestly, a lot of that falls on the players just wanting to hack things apart. And once I realized they weren't ever really going to be interested in anything other than that, I lowered my expectations and just gave them the mac and cheese gaming they want. That's how I have to deal with that scenario. It's interpreting the needs of your players to try to make sure everybody is happy. So, did we want this? Yes. Yes, there are people who want this. Did we, as in including you? I can't say if you wanted it. Clearly you have problems with it. That's fine. You won't get it then, maybe. Or unless you're like me and you get it because you want to do a criticism on it. But if you didn't want it, did you want absolutely everything that TSR ever made? I mean, surely they must have made some things that you weren't all that hot about. I mean, I could have put away the entirety of the Hollow World. That never really thrilled me. Anything they came out with, I looked at it, but it wasn't something I was all that interested in. About half of Birthright, it's okay. It's stock fantasy, nothing too fancy about it, so I could have taken it or left it. Dark Sun never really tripped my trigger. I know some people really liked it. A lot of people didn't care about it, so they still made it because writers wrote stuff for it. They made great art, and they made an interesting product. And it gave people a choice on what to do. Really? That's what this is. This is a choice, a different way to play, and maybe might snare some new gamers who are a little bit more inquisitive, a little bit more of the type of players who look at a challenge and like to take it on. Remember the three aspects of gaming. There are those who just love the combat, there are those who love to solve problems, and there are those who really get into the role play. Those are the primary three needs supported by role-playing. For those people in the second group, mysteries are great. Gives you something that you can work to accomplish and feel good about doing. Or did we want a Dark Sun? Some people do, some people don't. You're going to make some people happy with whatever you put out. You're going to make some people bitter because they didn't satisfy the need that you've been clamoring for. Pick your poison. And also remember this, you can rehash all the old stuff, but there's a lot of people who, they're like, we already have Forgotten Realms. That's all we've ever known and that's all we ever care about, which is a large chunk of their audience. So yeah, before they come out and put out new world books, they will support the people who want more Forgotten Realms. I mean, that's just business. So I can understand that point. Is it great? No, there will be time to put out Dark Sun, but a lot of that will be through other channels like Unearthed Arcana or the Beyond Plus stuff. You know, you just got to keep your eyes out, and I'm sure that stuff is trickling out. When I found out all the Ravenloft stuff was on DM's Guild, okay. Suddenly, now the quality may not always be there, but I know there's far more things than I could sit there and wait for Wizards of the Coast to drip feed. So, you know, it's maybe they'll come out with it, maybe they won't. Every year that goes by brings us closer to a 6th edition, and we all know it's going to come. Will they have this great Greyhawk supplement that covers the world and adventures that take place in the world? I don't know. It's up to them. But I'll look at everything that comes out and try to be objective. Does this meet needs of people? Is this a good product? And so far, I haven't really been all that upset about anything I've seen so far. So as the do we want, you're asking, do I want? Because other people do. And it's a matter of taking on other people's viewpoints. Clearly, you're not considering the people who do. There are people who do want this. So, yeah, that's you know, try to look outside of yourself there. Greyhawk, Spelljammer, Planescape, Mystara. Again, yeah, there are people who loved all of those. Great. And maybe they will support them. Maybe some of those are tied up in copyright issues. I don't know. There may be stuff behind the scenes that I'll never know about. Fine with me. I mean, if nothing else, the Dragonlance thing showed us how prickly of a path that can be. So, yeah, there may be reasons why some of those haven't been given the love, but a lot of it, it's because focus groups and people with a lot of degrees have gone on and said, we have a large bunch of people who are enjoying the game as we have it. We've introduced a few different world things with Wildamount and Eberron, and so they've shown that they're interested in doing that because they've gone after the groups that were in 4th edition and 3rd edition. Again, a large group who are still playing. Will they go back to Greyhawk, which was a product of 1st edition and OD&D? Or are they going to go back to Planescape, which was 2nd edition D&D, or Dark Sun, 2nd edition D&D? I can see them chronologically going backwards. So far, they've been doing that. And I think I've heard that there's some Dark Sun stuff out there, which is cool. But will they dedicate a world book to it and go for, you know, maybe not supporting it with this large bunch of people who want to buy their products? That's a business decision. Will they do it, though? They certainly can. It's on the table. All the stuff they have access to, it's on the table. Will it come out? Will you pester Crawford or whoever is behind making those decisions, and maybe they'll see a value in it? Yeah. Vote with your mouth. Go to their website. Say, hey, we want this. Why can't we get this? And, make enough clamor and they'll probably listen. But as far as saying, why are you making this when you could be making this, the answer is quite simple. They'll sell it. So, hey, maybe I'm wrong and this will work. I like to think so. I try to be optimistic, tempered with realism. Realistically, this will probably work fairly well. Will it enjoy as much as, as successful as some of the adventure paths that take place in the Forgotten Realms? Yeah, we'll see. I expect it'll sell at least as well as Sword Coast Adventures did. Will it sell as well as, say, Theros did? I think it'll probably sell better because it's in the Forgotten Realms, and Theros is a new world book. And I think it's a pretty good one. I do like Theros quite a bit. Or we could champion games that do the genre better, like Gumshoe, Call of Cthulhu. Okay, again, better is relative, but ones that are designed for that, I have no problems championing them. As a matter of fact, check out my website. Check out my YouTube channels. I cover all these other games. And I try to run all these other games and show people my experiences. And that's how we champion them. Not necessarily by criticizing what's there from other games, but by presenting them in front of other people and going, hey, This game exists. It's still out there. You can find PDFs. You can find old copies in the hoary shelves of used bookstores. And if you see it, grab it. This is a treasure. You can have a whole different game experience. Right now I'm running Ghostbusters for some friends and having a great time with it. It's not 5th edition D&D, and some people really, I'm sure in the group, would like to do 5th edition with this group. But I want to expose them to all these different games. I'm trying to expose them to all these fantastic games that I've got tucked away in the corner here. I want to break out the Master Book system and show them Indiana Jones. I want to show them Blood Shadows. I would really love to break out Torg and let them, be a Storm Knight in the world that's been changed by the Possibility Wars. I want to break out some Deadwood and break out something like Forever Worlds and see, was this game a good one that, never just had a chance, or was it kind of fatally flawed and never really had a chance? I want to see those other games. And honestly, I'm kind of a gaming historian that way because I go out of my way to find these games and make videos about them. To me, that's the greatest service that you can do to champion all these other ways of playing. Complaining about Candlekeep won't do you any good. You're just going to be a lone candle flickering in the tornado that is Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. They will put it out. They will promote it. They will sell millions of copies of it, probably. But if you really want people to take a look at older games, show them the good. Don't just rail and say, this is better, because you're never going to get people that way. Instead, say, hey, if you want to see a mystery, I got a game for you. This is all the good stuff about this game. And that's what I try to do. And I think that's the right way of going about this. Championing those games is relatively easy. You just have to present them before people. And I hope that people like the OGGM use their platforms for such a thing. I think it's far more productive. As far as Candlekeep, could it fall on its face? Absolutely. There could be the case that people don't want this as much as they think they do. But so far, they seem to be pretty in touch with the crowd. And I have to think they probably listen to the community, buzzing about things, send out questionnaires like, hey, would you like to see this, and listen to what everybody polled. And this probably was something that everybody got excited about. So I think it'll do okay. And I think they're going to treat it with all the respect that they understand. They don't put out 50 modules a year. They don't put out an adventure a week. They put out an adventure path every quarter that is supported, makes them a lot of money, I'm sure. I'm sure that Candlekeep Adventures will be something that they will curate, that it will be well written, well designed. If they've announced it, then they're already clearly to that point. So that's why I'm optimistic. And as far as all the other concerns, I hope that I've addressed them in a way that satisfies you, OGGM. We clearly do have different viewpoints. We both have them based on experience and our roots of gaming and the way that we prefer to play, which is cool. I don't think I'll ever change your perspective, nor do I necessarily want to. There's room for all of us. It's a big table. We've all got a seat somewhere. But here's my final on this, is that I would temper the disappointment, the dismay. There's still time for your stuff to get put out. Or hey, just saying, it's out there. If you really want to try to do something with some of that stuff, and you're feeling creative and froggy, this leaves room for other people to go in directions that Wizards isn't willing to invest in. And somebody to go up to Wizards and say, hey, I want to revisit all of the Greyhawk stuff. I want to go into dealing with IUs and the Shield lands. I want to go and have an expose on Voluna and bring out this lore for players, used based on all this old stuff. And it'll leave room for somebody to make some really nice products in the end if Wizards decides they don't want to develop it. And if they say, no, you can't, maybe that's a hint that they're going to sometime in the very near future. I certainly hope so, because I have a lot of love in my heart for Greyhawk, certainly, and for some of those other games. I loved Planescape, for instance, and I think if they took another look at Planescape, it would fix a lot of the problems that I did have with Planescape. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. So, that's my video response, and I'm sorry I went a little long. I tend to do that a bit, but I try to address and have this kind of a conversation with anybody who's interested. So if you heard this and go, geez, he did all of this just for a comment, number one, it was a wall of text that really, again, I wanted to treat fairly and address. And this is not me poo-pooing his ideas. He certainly has perspective, and he has his own ideas. So, Grumpy, OGGM, thank you for your video. Again, thank you for commenting on mine. It's honestly my meat and drink. I wish more people would comment on my stuff, even if it isn't agreeing with me. And I do hope you have that great mystery, and maybe this is a game. If you do play 5th edition with people, maybe Candlekeep Mysteries will let you have a successful mystery, or at least give you some ideas on how to make that work a little bit better. But those are just my insights, my thoughts, my feelings, and my perspective. Hopefully, maybe sparking more comments, and we'll see together in this great hobby we all enjoy. So, thank you very much. I am Omnisci here in my lair. Once more, very happy to be in front of this camera making another video for you. Stay tuned for the next one. But until then, if you like this, if you want to be part of the conversation, feel free to comment. Feel free to link a video response or anything like that. Let's keep talking, because there's so many great topics out there we can talk about. And mysteries is just one little aspect of gaming, but a fun one, and could see a new renaissance with this new product that has already sparked a couple of videos. So hey, it's doing something right? All right, until next time, thank you and farewell.